Hello, and welcome to FTT Chats, where we sit down with some of the great and the good of fintech for a bit of a chat. And today I am sitting down with Lita Gliptis. Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, and it's so good to be here with you today.
Excellent.
Even better was in person, but I'll live.
Someday, I know, someday.
One day, right? One day.
And I say sitting down, and we're both melting. So I hate dating interviews, but it is like 1,000 degrees in London, and it's been like that for about a week. So we're hot, we're glowing today.
Exactly. I feel like I might lose my passport one of these days, because I start the last few weeks with the heat in London being what it is. I start every conversation with, "Oh my God, it's hot," and everyone goes, "What's wrong with you? You're Greek."
Yes, but like you can go to the beach in Greece.
Exactly. We know how to handle it.
I know. And we're going to start now. I always start my FTT chats with the same question, and I feel a bit silly because I don't know many people in the fintech world who don't know who you are. You're one of those people that's just name alone, like Cher. So Leda, who are you and what do you do?
Oh my God, this is like the best thing anyone has ever said, and I am going to use it for the rest of my life. I am a recovering banker, I guess, is the best way of describing this. I have worked mostly in banks, but also on other sides of the FI ecosystem as an advisor, as a consultant, in startups, mostly around digital transformation, business reengineering and transformation first, and what became digital transformation. I guess the reason I am first name basis with everyone in fintech is partly because I have an unusual name, but also because in a way, just like yourself, Liz, I was lucky enough to be there from the very beginning. And I say lucky because I don't think any of us could have foreseen which way this ecosystem would evolve. But call it 15 years ago, I found myself working in IT in a big bank, and the world of fintech, however you want to define it, started coming to the doorstep. And for people like ourselves who are curious, who are enterprising, who go, "What happens if I poke this?" It was an amazing time to learn so much by osmosis. And here we are, 15 years later, having grown with that space in a way that I don't think can be replicated, actually.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was. I mean, I often sort of cheekily say I've been in fintech for 25 years, but it was financial technology. It was like banks buying tech, banks buying data. And then you saw this change. And then all of a sudden we were cool I think we're going into the non-cool phase a bit, that.
Which I'm kind of more comfortable with, because like I spent so long. So my first ever banking job was with a 4-man startup selling software into Deutsche Bank. And at the time, 4 people, startup, East London, fintech wasn't the word, right? We were just a small company that couldn't afford an office. So we worked from like one of the people's living rooms, and we were selling into Deutsche Bank. And we are, of course, IT, right? You're in the basement. And it was a moment about 15 years after that, 10 years after that, when somebody was like, "Oh, you and the cool kids." And I was like, "What?" So going back to being the uncool kids, I'm more comfortable with that. We might as well get to do the beautiful work.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Do you remember when it was like cheap to get office space on Great Eastern Street? Do you we had an office with a roof terrace.
Oh, you know what? COVID might actually do that again. Every time I speak to my teams, who tend to be quite a lot younger than me these days, I'm like, I remember the days when we had super users and blinking cursors on green screens. So like, I've seen it all.
Okay, we could chat forever, but I would go with my structure. I'm going to stay with my structure of my questions, because this is something I really wanted to speak with you about. And it was because part of my job is I call up people and we have a chat about stuff. And I usually say, what's important to you? What are you working on? And so this was a conversation with a banker I had earlier this year, IT banker person. And he said, we're getting to the point where we need to stop focusing on having to be innovative and start focusing on being good. And what he meant by that was at a large bank, an incumbent bank, there comes a time where the system just has to fit in the Borg. It has to work for customers. It just has to be something good. and they wanted to move away from the, as you said, the cool kids section and cover customers. So, I wanted to kind of get your take on it about, are good and innovative mutually exclusive, or can we be both, or like where are we moving towards?
I think it's a very, very good question, obviously, because it's you. And the answer I think is twofold. One is, we need to be motivated by being good. And if the way to do that is being innovative, then great. But for such a long time, innovation functions inside banks, and I've worn the hat for more than one bank, and I've been in that space. Innovation functions were meant to do a whole host of things, but drive the business forward in an immediate way was not on the list. Yes, you were meant to provide insights as to how you would drive the business forward eventually. Yes, it was the place of experimentation and learning. And 15 years ago, that was great. But having done the learning, that didn't translate to genuine large-scale implementations. And for many organizations, it translated to innovation theater, jazz hands, a lot of stuff that was more for PR and keeping up with the Joneses than it was about really transforming the business. And the problem is that if you focus on being innovative, the way you measure it very often has absolutely nothing to do with business outcomes. Whereas to the very, very poignant quote you bring to the table, if we focus on being good, we're going to measure outages, we're going to measure performance, we're going to measure client satisfaction, employee satisfaction, we're going to measure return on equity. So you're going to have these hard metrics that measure the sort of viability of your business, the success of your business. And you might actually get there in ways that are pretty traditional, but I would doubt that. A whole host of things have happened in the last 15 years. And for me, the most transformative of them is that the regulators have come to the table globally and said, we now know what is possible, and we expect you to do better. And therefore, it's not a choice anymore. The timing of transformation is not a choice. The depth of transformation is not a choice. There's still choice as to how much else you do, but you can't play at the edges anymore. So I think your banker is absolutely right, both in terms of what the banks have to do from a regulatory perspective and what they will need to do, because look at COVID, right? The things that the banks struggled with were things that we knew they would struggle with 10 years ago. The systems cannot cope with real-time change. We knew that. This is not a surprise. So the fact that all of the things that had to be done meant that humans had to work through the night to hack the system is not a surprise. It's exactly what we knew would happen. So the time is here to be good. And if to do that, you need to be innovative, great.
Yeah, no, I know people that work at IT and banks that used to tell me that they sometimes couldn't sleep at night thinking of all the duct tape and chewing gum that was holding
I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but there's a bank I worked with. I won't name them, but they I sat in a senior risk committee meeting with them. Well, that's not so long ago, and we're going through the risks, and pretty high on the list is death. And I'm thinking there's something I'm missing here. This is like short for something, but it's a joke. But no, they genuinely mean death, because so much of their infrastructure is COBOL based that the people who they can bring in to deal with it are retiring and in some occasions dying. and death was a factor in this bank's committee. And you're sitting there going, wow. Yeah.
A whole bunch of like employable 60, 70 something.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know. Cool. I'm going to move on to my next question. Is it possible that it's just barriers that stop traditional banks from innovating in the way that we kind of hope and wish they would, or is it possible at all to have true innovation at an incumbent bank?
I'd say there are three things at play here. One is what we touched on before, which is for a long time, banks tried to do innovation to be seen to be doing innovation rather than to drive business outcomes. And of course, that means that you're you're doing a thing that doesn't plug into the rest of the thing, and therefore the rest of the thing is busy making money, busy running the business, and to a very large extent will see you as a nuisance or something of lesser significance. And that could have been entirely avoidable if innovation teams had business deliverables and business outcomes. We know why they didn't, because you had to learn, you had to iterate, but once you've done your learning, if you're still not measured against business outcomes, the main body of the business will be like, get out of my way. So I think that's one thing. The second thing is that there are a lot of things that a 4-person startup doesn't have that allows them to break things and proceed. One of them is customers. So when you are in a big organization that has customers that are either consuming a service, paying for a service, relying on a service, and when that service is your mortgage and your grandmother's pension, and the lending facilities that keep global commerce going, prudence is the right attitude, not just because regulators want it, but because I don't want my mortgage provider to be playing around with that and potentially breaking something that will leave me exposed, right? So I think the second thing is it is natural to be prudent in a particular way. And we never had the right conversation between wear jeans and do crazy things in the innovation center, don't do anything in the main office, and where does that leave us? And I think that the third piece to that is if we accept that we've been doing innovation wrong because we put it in the wrong place, and where we need to put it is right at the core of the business, where we say, okay, technology, methodologies, and ways of working are here, have been tested, they're capable, they will not break anything. So look at the business imperatives and use these new things and be innovative within the parameters of your duty of care and fiduciary responsibilities. However, in doing all of that, you're going to have to change the organization. It's not the technology anymore. That has been tried and tested within your own innovation department and across the market. The thing that most needs to change now is the governance of the organization itself. And it is partly humans having to accept that what made them special isn't as useful anymore. It's different ways of working. I mean, why is Agile so hard to implement inside a big bank? I would say that it's mostly about how cross charges work and about how people are used to running their teams, rather than the fact that you can't do stand-ups and emergent design. And for me, the biggest barrier is human and structural and governance. It's not technology. We've got this now. So to answer your question, is it possible? Yes, but it will only be possible when we align it to business deliverables and then have the hard conversations around it. Two things that very few organizations have done well.
I think you're bringing in the point you made earlier about good as well. It flows very well.
Exactly.
It's as you know, it's an ongoing journey, an ongoing conversation in this industry. So my next question is slightly cheeky, because you have a PhD in politics, Dr. Glipsis.
I do.
Does that help you navigate politics in large multi-siloed legacy organizations? How has that helped you with your career?
You know, it's funny. It has helped me in 3 ways. When I was very young, and not known as I am now, it helped me get meetings because everyone assumed I was a guy. Dr. A.L. Gliptis, everyone expected to see a guy called Al. And it has happened more than once when I would walk into a meeting and be like, Dr. Gliptis isn't here, love. Would you like a cup of tea? But jokes apart, so the PhD itself was on constructing political legitimacy and the rise of political Islam in Turkey. So on the surface, it has not helped me at all. But it has actually helped me in 3 ways. One is the discipline of staying with a problem until you've answered it to your satisfaction for years doesn't leave you. And in organizations that don't give themselves thinking time, it's actually a very interesting habit to have, that you're like, this is not the full answer. And you have that, or you don't have 4 years to answer the question, but you have that hunger for a complete answer, which is useful. The second is systems thinking, right? If you have tried to understand how humans operate at a government level, then trying to understand how people operate at a 50,000 person organization level is actually weirdly similar. And then the third is tribalism, because a lot of what I ended up working on was national identities. And on the surface of it, it really should have nothing to do with how humans operate inside a big organization. But actually, it gives you a lot of insight on how groups form, how groups identify, how to create constructive tribalism, and how to break it. And I'm preaching to the choir, because you've had roles where you did exactly that. You didn't call it that, but you did exactly that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. As again, we could talk for hours. So we're gonna finish up with one of my favorite questions. I asked this of someone once, and they talked about implementing international regulatory regimes, which I thought was very interesting. Okay. But what brings you joy, Leda?
Not implementing international regulatory regimes. Oh my God.
Okay, everyone, to each their own.
All right. Well, it takes all sorts. Humans bring me joy. My friends, my family, my community within this ecosystem, who are now friends and family. The people that come together to do great things. And one of the things that was the biggest revelation for me, because I fell into IT, right? This is not a job 15-year-old me dreamt of, is that you come into what is considered a soulless industry, banking. You come into the non-human side of it, IT and ops, and you find yourself at the beginning of a journey that becomes all about the human user, all about the human engineer, all about the relationships between the humans and how the technology can empower them, and then the teams you can build to bring that magic to the table. I mean, isn't that amazing? It's just amazing.
It's true. There are lots of great people in banking and IT. Now, people outside don't believe you, and you're like,
no, it's true.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Leda. I greatly appreciate you sitting down and chatting.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun. Until we meet again in person.
I know, in a much cooler place. Thanks.